Divorce is one of the most challenging transitions in life, and without the right guidance, it can quickly turn into a disaster. Welcome to Dodging Divorce Disasters, the show that helps you navigate the legal, financial, and emotional pitfalls of divorce before they happen. In each episode, I sit down with a top professional in the divorce community to hear real-life war stories, cautionary tales from the trenches of divorce. But I won't leave you with just the horror stories. The experts will break down exactly what went wrong and, more importantly, how you can avoid making the same mistakes. Whether you're in the early stages of separation, deep in the process, or supporting someone through it, we are here to help you move forward with clarity, confidence, and fewer regrets. I'm your host, Lori Hawkins, and I am a local expert in divorce real estate. I am so excited to be sharing these incredible professionals with you. Let's dive in. I am so excited today to have this guest with me. Her name is Tiffany Chirokas. I said that right?
That's me.
And you have got a lot of letters after the end of your name. I know she's a therapist, but I am going to let you kind of explain more in detail what the letters mean, what you
Yeah.
kind of do exactly, the name of your company, where you practice, so everybody kind of can get a feel for you.
Yeah, for sure. So MSW is a master's in social work. So right out of high school, I went to college, App State, followed by UNC Charlotte to get my bachelor's in social work. I did that out of college. I was offered a job in the Mecklenburg County Department of Social Services. So I worked there in family interventions. For a couple of years, I did an internship there. But prior to that, in foster care. So I got a good, healthy glimpse of what happens in our child welfare systems. Started a family of my own and decided to stay home with them. Did that for a while. And then right before COVID, and I had a lot of other hobby type jobs while raising my kids. But right before COVID and during COVID, a lot of people had come to me asking for advice and saying, hey, like we're in this situation, this struggle, and there's nobody that can help us. And they're saying our only option is to go to an inpatient treatment center. And I don't want to send my kids there, or I don't want my husband to have to be gone for us for this long, but the wait lists are astronomical to get help. And so after hearing that story several times going through COVID, it was probably mid 2020 that I was like, you know what? There's a gap. Want to start helping bridge that. And so I went back to get my graduate degree and get my master's in social work. And from there, I went on and applied for my license. So the LCSWA is a licensed clinical social worker associate. And what the associate means is that per the board, I'm required to complete a certain number of clinical hours under supervision, kind of like your PA in a doctor setting would, and then pass the state board exam to then be able to practice independently. So it's kind of like a safety net to make sure that we are doing what we need to do in a way that's most beneficial to everyone. So I have a great supervisor. I adore her. She's fantastic. She's got years and years and years of experience and no longer practices independently, but just supervises. So she's wonderful and a wealth of knowledge. So I'm super grateful to her and will probably be my person long after I pass my board exam and don't technically need someone, because there's such value in having wise counsel. So I love that about her. So went back to school, got my master's, applied for my license, and applied to run a private practice. So private practices are regulated by our board. You're approved. So I got that, and I opened my private practice called Hope Arise, and I do short-term crisis care. So what I tell people when they reach out to me is my job is to work myself out of a job. So I want to give you the skills you need in a short period of time so that you no longer need me. And the way that that's different from your typical therapist is often people will go to a therapist and you'll have the same therapist for years and years and years and years and years. And that's beneficial to some people. And if I work with a client who we realize at the end of our 10 to 12 weeks, like, hey, you really benefit from like a check-in type situation, I have referrals that I will send people to that can get that long-term check-in type stuff. My goal when people come to me is let's figure out the crisis you're telling me. Let's decide if that's your true crisis or if there's something else happening. Let's build the tools you need to resolve your crisis. Build your toolbox so that the next time you encounter a situation similar, you can pull from what you learned and be able to overcome that struggle, whatever it is. And I tell people, my crisis may not be your crisis, and your crisis may not be the next person's crisis. A crisis is anything that rocks your personal boat, that has you taking on water, that's caused you to be seasick. Anything that's like going against your normal day to day, that's your personal crisis. And that's okay. How do we get through that? So I'm the person that's walking beside you, that's helping you identify what your true crisis is rather than your emotional response. Sometimes our crisis is not what we think it is because we are so focused on the thing that caused an emotional response from us, but that may not be the actual crisis at hand. So my job is to help you identify that crisis, build the skills you need, and be on your way. That being said, there are people who have come back to me 6 months later, 8 months later, and said, "Hey, I have this new thing." And I'm like, "Come on, let's get you in, let's figure it out, let's work on it." But as far as maintenance care, like the check-in, that's not my jam. How do we know we're there? I tell people jokingly, when you start telling me about your brother's, sister's, mother's problems, we have no crisis to deal with. So you are done with me. So that's kind of how I work, how I roll. Yeah.
I love that. Now, just to give some backstory, you and I met fairly recently, within the last few months, at a Second Saturday divorce workshop. You were
Yes.
kind enough to be the presenter for the mental health portion of the workshop that is held for the Lake Norman area. And I was so taken by what you said because honestly, Tiffany, I don't think I have ever met another therapist that does short term trauma work.
Yeah, they're few and far between, and none in our area that I'm aware of. And the number one reason why I went back to get my license to provide therapeutic care, because I saw the distress in these mamas' eyes when they were like, "Do you know of any options other than sending my kid to in treatment care?" Which was farther than they needed to go, but the only next option outside of being on a wait list for a good therapist. And so the way that I work, because it's short term, 10 to 12 weeks, my turnover is a lot greater than
Mhm.
your term therapist who has clients for 3, 4, 5 years, and that spot's locked in. The way I schedule is also a little different. It takes people a minute to get used to, but I don't lock people in. Like I don't say, "Hey, Lori, you get to be my 10 a.m. Tuesday every week for 10 weeks. I say, "Lori, here's my schedule. Book yourself out. Pick your appointments that work for you." And that's how I work. So my schedule fluctuates. So you may be a person that's like, "I need morning appointments. You don't have any this week." That doesn't mean I won't have them next week. And so it kind of also helps because people realize they may need me on a Monday and then they don't need me again until the following Thursday. And so opening that flexibility, I don't lock you into like you're my Tuesday 10 a.m., which is helpful for people. So it keeps my availability open, and it's intentional.
No, that's great. That's great. Now, as this relates to divorce, is divorce a trauma in itself that people come to you with? Or does the divorce have to include abuse of some kind or something that's even deeper than just the emotional content of a divorce in general?
Absolutely not. So I work with clients who come to me and say, "Hey, can you help us decide if divorce is our next step? Or can we resolve what's going on here? Or can you help us walk through what a healthy divorce would look like, what this is going to look like for our family?" I work with one on ones. I currently now have a couple of one on one, the one part of the couple. So I'm not offering the marital part, but rather the individual part of figuring out herself through this relationship. And divorce, there's a reason for the divorce, right? Something has happened. So that something typically is the crisis or the trauma. So can we work through that crisis or trauma and build back a healthy relationship? Or are we in a situation where healthy is divorce? So often figuring that out for them. And I have worked with people who are fresh out of divorce and are like, "Okay, now what? What do I do? with myself now. Who am I? So working on finding our identity post a marriage, because in that marriage, your identity was different than your identity post your marriage.
Now, if someone comes to you going through a divorce and you find that there are much deeper issues that have put them there, if that goes beyond the 8 to 12 weeks, do they stay with you? Or at that point, would you refer them to someone else?
It really is case to case. If we get 8 weeks in and we discover something that really needs to be dealt with, I am not kicking you out of my office at 12 weeks. Absolutely not. The idea is we start, and the work we do is very intensive as far as we're having hard conversations. We're doing some deep reflection. There's trust being built between the two of us very early on so that we can hit the ground running. But if we get 8 weeks in and we're like, whoa, this we didn't talk about, and this seems to be something deeper, we will work through that. I'm not going to be like, sorry, your 12 weeks are up, you're out. We're gonna work through what we come upon. But often we discover those quite early on, and can really do some good work. Typically, by the end of the 10 to 12 weeks, we're sitting there going, okay, this is more of a check-in. How are you doing? How are you using these things? And so that's when we kind of realize, like, okay, you might be good without me for a while, which is my goal. I want people to be self-sufficient, healthy, and able to battle their own crises, but know that I'm available if things get tough.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you help to build a toolbox for them to be able to move forward on their own, but with the safety net of you
Yeah.
if they need you in that way. I always like to talk about a little fun fact with someone before we
Yeah.
dive in deeper to the divorce issue. And from what I have talked to you about, you are not an animal lover.
No.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I always joked with my husband. We have had a dog since we first got married, and it was our little thing. And then when we had children, I was like, they should have a law that says you can't have animals before you have children, because when you have animals and children, it's a whole nother thing. Like, I got extra things to keep alive. So for a long time, we were a family of one pet and one pet only. We ventured with a fish. I was like, this is too much. I have 4 children. That's a lot to keep alive. I don't need a fish too. As my children have grown, they're a bit older now. They are all teenagers. They convinced me over the years that we need family pets. So now we have 2 dogs, a rabbit that lives in my living room, and a tortoise that lives at the top of my stairs. It's a lot. Even my friends will be like, who are you? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know who I am.
I need to go see a trauma specialist.
Yeah. Yeah. The traumatic part will be when these children leave and I have their animals. And I'm like,
Did they convince you to a rabbit? But the tortoise is really what kind of has sparked my interest.
yeah. So we have always had a tradition in our family, and it was an accidentally on purpose type of situation that when our kids turned 10, they get to go on a special trip. So the boys picked something with their dad and their grandfather. The girls ended up picking something with me and their grandmother. And my youngest lives in suburban city life. My parents live in the mountains, so she's always dreamed of being a cowgirl. And for her 10th birthday, we paid a man to live on his farm in his house and help do farm chores. And I was like, you're a genius. And I feel like I was just duped here. So we paid the man to live in his farm and do his farm chores. And while we were there, he has rabbits that he sells at like the farm thing. And one of them had recently had babies. And my children, my girls, fell in love. And there was this, please, mommy, it's for a birthday and yada, yada. And I was like, oh, it's so cute. It's like this big. And it's no longer that. It's like a dog size rabbit now that lives in my living room. And my dad, who I love dearly, my second oldest daughter, so she's the third in line, has always loved turtles. We've done sea turtle excursions and saved the sea turtles and all the things. And she's asked for years for a tortoise, and I've said no for years. And one year, a couple years ago, my dad thought it would be so kind to get her one for Christmas. So here we are.
That is so funny. You know, I just watched some type of show about turtles, and I did not realize, and I may be wrong, that the more room you give them, that their shell continues to grow
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
And it can get massive if the room allows it to. Is that
Yes.
correct?
I'm sure with different types of turtles and tortoises, yes. I also didn't realize there was a difference in a turtle and a tortoise. And a turtle has to live in a water tank, and a tortoise lives in like this safari type landscape that we have upstairs. So he has like a whole enclosure thing and lights and all the reptile things that I'm like, mm-mm, mm-mm.
You know what? You are the cool mom now, and you have built memories for these 4 children that they will pass on down from
I
generation
just
to
pray their colleges
generation.
allow them to take their memories with them and they can have a tortoise in their dorm room.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. All right. That was a good one. That was a good one. Okay. So what this whole podcast is meant to do is to talk to you guys that are dealing with people that are going through a divorce, because we all that deal in the divorce niche hear, not just hear them, we live the stories with these individuals. And I'm hoping that we can share ways of how someone listening to this podcast could perhaps dodge this divorce disaster if they handled it in a different way. Do
Yeah.
you have a story generally that you can relate to us and give us some advice?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing from a therapeutic standpoint of how do we dodge the bullet is to make sure we're asking for help before it's too late. The most successful people I have met are the ones who have asked for help before they're in over their head, before things have spiraled, words have been said that can't be taken back, actions have been had that can't be undone, and thinking that we are the expert in all the areas. So I did work with a couple that I'd never met the husband. I did one-on-one with her, and he financially took him through the ringer, and she kind of just did it because she thought he's right. He said he talked to somebody. This is what's supposed to happen. I guess this is where I am. By the time I met her, she was in a situation where she was ready to sell their home, which she was living and raising their children. She just was in a financial disaster and just trusting. And she had gotten to the point where she was so over it that anything to make it end was her solution to her own demise. And so I connected her with some different resources that can help with the financial aspect, with the questions that I know I don't have the answers to. So I think that's the biggest thing is to know when to ask for help, to know that there are experts in a field and we don't have all the answers, and never trust one single source in your decision-making process. There is so many resources in this area available that maybe weren't available 10 years ago, but we have now. So take full advantage and use those outside resources. I'm a huge advocate for wise counsel. When people sit with me, I want to know in their first session, who are your people? Who's your circle? Who's your support network? Who are you getting your information from? And when they tell me Google is their only resource, I'm like, well, we need to work on that because you need a circle. Everyone needs your support circle because we all are quick to react on our emotional responses. And we make impulsive decisions that end up being regretted decisions most of the time. So people who can help us breathe, crisis people like myself who can say like, okay, you're feeling this, yes, but let's look at the actual problem at hand and how we address that problem versus the emotional response that we have. And making sure you're working with experts who are willing to be experts in their field and only their field. When they start giving you advice that's outside of their field, that's when like your red flags need to go off. So I am one that's like, stay in my lane. I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to get you with the people who can do their thing because I am only an expert in my field. I don't claim to be an expert in anyone else's.
There are so many good nuggets in that, what you just said. So many. And reaching out early is great advice. I feel like personally going through a divorce myself, you're so overwhelmed that you almost just like a turtle. You almost just shrink into your shell and just pray it all goes away.
Right.
And you're in denial and you're just like, I can't deal with any. You deal with nothing because there's so much to deal with. And since I have been doing divorce real estate now for about 4 years, I realize how many great resources are out there. Things that I did not even know existed. Things that at one point in time I would have thought, I'm not going to waste my money on this because I
Mhm.
can deal with this myself. But
Mhm.
now being on the other side of divorce for many years, I've been divorced for many years. I wish I had gone to a therapist. I wish I would have had a financial planner to help me better plan my money. It would have been so worth the money up front to go to these people.
Mhm.
I think that's one reason I love Second Saturday so much and one of the sponsors up here at the Lake Norman area because I truly believe that we are stronger together and we can better serve our clients to better
Absolutely.
when we know that each other exists and can refer people out and not
Mm.
think that we know everything because it's impossible for someone to be an expert in everything. Even a
Yeah,
family law attorney realizes their limitations.
sure.
So I think that is really, really great advice. Well, piggybacking on that, if someone is looking to find a therapist or a trauma therapist, such as yourself, what should they look for? What
Yeah.
questions should they ask? And how should they know if they should do trauma versus a traditional therapist?
Yeah. So there's a lot of modalities in therapy. We all practice a little differently. Most therapists are going to offer a free consultation of some sort, typically a phone call. And that gives you the opportunity to share the highlights of your story. And a good therapist is going to say, hey, here's why I feel like I can help you, or here's why I think I'm not the best fit for you. If you don't hear in that consult them explaining to you how and why they think they're a right fit, or how and why they think they're not the best fit, then that's kind of a red flag of like, this person may just be looking for clients rather than looking for the best fit for clients. We are not at a shortage of people in need of therapeutic care. And so really, honestly, no therapist should be just taking clients just for the sake of taking clients. The therapeutic relationship is huge. And if we're not clicking over the phone in that 15 minutes, so I offer a 15-minute phone call that's free. You get to book it at a time that works for you. And in that phone call, I want to know, what's your crisis? What's going on? What are you looking for? What do you want to gain? And what do you hope to get out of therapy? And then I'm going to explain to you how I would handle that situation, what my goals for you would be, and how I think we would get there. And if that doesn't sound like something that works for you, and I tell them this, if that doesn't sound like something that works for you, that's okay. And I have some other options. Typically, people, if they're setting up a consult call with me, they've got 2 or 3 other that they've set up as well. But I want people to know that it's okay if you don't think the way that I'm going to do this is going to be the best way for you, because if we don't click, we're both wasting our time and our resources. So I think just finding a therapist that's going to give you a free consult that you can talk to, that you can ask questions, and a therapist is going to be open and honest with you about how they treat, what they do, and if that style works for you. I tell people, like, we're going to have hard conversations right out of the gate. We're going to dig deep. We don't go in your past unless it's the only way to move you forward, because we're trying to deal with the current crisis at hand. And so I've heard you say the word trauma a few times. Trauma can be crisis. It's not always the crisis that's put before me. The crisis could simply be, hey, this thing happened in our marriage and we don't know how to move past it, or if it's something we can move past. Or crisis can be, hey, he lost his job. He's been without a job for 3 months and it's negatively affecting things in our life. How do we get through this? Or the crisis may be, hey, I struggle with a lot of anxiety. I don't know how to manage that anxiety in a way that's healthy for my family or that's healthy for myself. So, crisis can be anything and everything that's rocking your day to day boat, not necessarily always something that was traumatic, if that makes sense.
It does, and I'm very glad that you corrected me on that because I was using the word trauma. But like you said, trauma and crisis can be 2 separate things, and you deal with the crisis at hand,
Yes.
which
Which
is
is a trauma that has come back, something that we've struggled with or something that happened in our past that now is pouring over into a current life situation, but not always the crisis.
That makes total sense. It really does. And I'm glad you made that differentiation, because I might have misled someone to think that there had to be domestic violence or abuse or something like that, when it could just be, I mean, not just be anxiety, because I know that can be crippling, but that's great. I'm glad you did that. Well, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you think you would like for our listeners to hear, or anything?
I just think remembering that divorce doesn't look the same for every single person, and encouraging the people who are able to get through a divorce in a clean, easy manner, that's great and that's awesome. And that it's also okay to be the people who need people that are walking beside you, because it's not quite as easy. It's not quite as clean. And no two divorce experiences are going to look the same, feel the same, or be the same. I'm a big advocate for don't put yourself in a box. Don't write your narrative before the story has happened. Don't assume you must look this way, be this way because of divorce, or your divorce must look this way, be this way, or it's not normal. I want people to understand that everybody experiences everything a little bit differently. You and I, Lori, might go through the exact same situation together at the exact same time, but my experience is going to be different than your experience in some way, shape, or form. And validating that for people. So I think, yeah, just encouraging people that you are not your divorce. Your divorce doesn't mean you have to be a different person at the end. It might mean you're a different person at the end. It's just a moment in time in your story. It's one season of many, 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 many seasons that you'll live through in your life.
That's a great, encouraging way to end. That's great. Now, I am going to be putting all your contact info at the end of this video, but just tell people the best way to get a hold of you if they want to contact you.
So I have a website. It's www.hopearise.plllc. And on there, there's a link that says book an appointment. And that gives you the opportunity to schedule a consult call, to book an appointment. And then if you scroll all the way to the very bottom, there is my email address, my phone number, where you can reach out or send me an email and say, hey, do you think that this is something you would be willing to work with? Happy to do that if you want to send an email. I do get lots of those of like, hey, is this something you are familiar with? And I'll say, yeah, hey, I've dealt with that. And then here, let's set up a phone consult. Here's the link to do that. And let's talk a little bit more, because even through an email, I do want to have a conversation over the phone, because I want to make sure that I'm the best fit for you to do that. So yeah, that's typically the easiest way. All my information's on the website. I have a Facebook, Instagram if people want to follow. Usually I just use that for positive encouragement, some insight, some aha moment type stuff. But yeah,
That's great. Well, I cannot thank you enough. I think what you do is great. And I am so happy that somehow our paths crossed. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information contained herein is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, please seek an attorney.